Blaziken has been the favorite starter Pokemon of many ever since they first chose Torchic in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. In the competitive scene, it was a fine Pokemon with a unique set of offensive traits. It used these to carve out a useful niche for itself in its debut generation of Advanced OU's metagame, while it became one of the best wall breakers in the following generation's UU. However, starting in Generation 5, Black and White, we wouldn't see Blaziken allowed in OU, let alone UU, for the next decade. Upon receiving its hidden ability, Speed Boost, Blaziken instantly began smashing through OU. It wasn't long before it proved to be too much for the tier and got itself banned, becoming the first starter Pokemon to do so. In the subsequent generation, Blaziken was banned almost instantly, not even needing to use the fancy new Mega Evolution it had received, though that of course was incredibly broken too. Come Generation 7, the player base was accustomed enough to Blaziken's brokenness that they knew better than to waste their time leaving it in OU. Players who weren't around to experience the full brunt of Blaziken's brokenness might wonder, what was it that made it so busted? This is especially interesting since it was no longer deemed ban-worthy in Generation 8 Sword and Shield. What changed? That's what we'll be exploring today. Blaziken was always offensively threatening with its strong attacking stats and fantastic stab combination of fire and fighting, famously destroying the Skarmory Blissey walling duo in its debut generation. Sure, there were a few Pokemon that resisted its stabs, but there weren't anything Blaziken couldn't deal with, whether through coverage moves or through sheer power. What always held Blaziken back from dominating everything with its offensive ferocity was its thoroughly average speed, which left it vulnerable to having its naturally frailty and weakness-laden defensive typing taken advantage of. This was the case in Generation 3's OU and Generation 4's UU alike, though in the latter, Blaziken was already markedly more difficult to manage. Part of it was the tier's lower stat levels, while Blaziken had received the power-crept blessings of Life Orb. Yes, but another part was that Blaziken could sometimes run a set that circumvented the issue of the speed, be it with Vacuum Wave Priority or Choice Scarf Speed Boost. Gen 5 took this concept to the extreme in true Gen 5 power creep fashion by saying, alright, let's not make it work to circumvent its speed anymore, let's just give it Speed Boost. It received a ton of hype from day one. Finally, its biggest drawback, no longer an issue. Players were also eyeing it excitedly because Blaziken had also received a huge Gen 5 change. The buffing of High Jump Kit's base power to a stunning 130, easily outdamaging the likes of close combat. Furthermore, Ninetales' newfound permanent Sun via Drought would make withstanding Blaziken's Fire Stab a ridiculously difficult order. Blaziken's already fierce stabs had been elevated to staggering levels of power, and it had its speed issue fixed. It was going to leave Infernape that it ousted it in the previous generation in the dust, and that it certainly did. Blaziken's history is getting kind of interesting, right? If you are enjoying this video, make sure you let me know by leaving a like and also subscribe if you're new. I upload these discussion videos 3 to 4 times a month and competitive Pokemon every single day. Now, while the hype and excitement was real, nobody was expecting Blaziken to be so good it'd be broken. They thought it'd merely be a good, legitimately OU wall breaker. After all, Blaziken certainly seemed scary, but with all the other insane additions to the game Generation 5 had brought, it was difficult to imagine the Blazing Kickin' Chicken standing out. And then they saw it in action. It absolutely shredded nearly everything in its path. Whether it was running Swords Dance or a mix set, what little its monstrously overpowered stabs didn't eviscerate, which they often did even against Resist with their absurd sheer strength, was nothing that couldn't easily be handled by coverage. Forget outrunning it either. It didn't struggle to slot in Protect, so it could easily get that one speed boost even against Pokemon it'd initially be slower than and proceed to crush everything. Or get that extra speed boost to outrun Choice Scarf Politoed or Sand Rush Excadrill. Blaziken even resisted the tier's most popular priority, Scissors Bullet Punch. It was easy for it to get going. After all, its favorite victim was the tier's #1 wall, Ferrothorn, and once it got going, it was insanely hard to stop, especially in Sun. Now, Blaziken didn't need Sun, and was still incredibly broken without it. It was used to phenomenal effect on Sand and Weatherless teams as well. However, Sun was the factor that removed the doubt from even the most skeptical doubters of Blaziken's brokenness. You see, Sun just didn't send the power of its Fire Stab into the stratosphere, but also weakened opposing water attempts to KO it as well. For example, letting it lift something like Azumaro's Aqua Jet or Jellicent's Scald with ease. It was a knockout machine, a sweep machine, a machine to induce cries of why is this allowed in players overwhelmed by the absurd nature of its all-encompassing brutality. Indeed, the player base realized that they did not have a good answer for the question of why is this allowed, and so Blaziken was banned. Not only was it was banned multiple months before several other unequivocally obscene monsters were. Sandville Garchomp, Sandrush Excadrill, Thundurus, Deoxys Speed. Such was the effect Blaziken had on the metagame. Fortunately, Blaziken was not banished to obscurity. It thrived on Uber Sun teams, functioning much the same as it did in OU. X and Y removed permanent Sun from the equation, though Blaziken could still easily abuse shortened Sun durations with the help of Mega Charizard Y if it really wanted. But, just like in Generation 5, it didn't need Sun to be broken. It was still fundamentally absurd for its ability to not just smash through effectively the entire metagame, but to hardly break a sweat in making the effort of outspeeding it too, while also resisting another incredibly common priority move, this time Bisharp's Sucker Punch. Blaziken also received another new offensive buff in Generation 6. It can now wield the much improved knockoff as a weapon to both strike crucial stab resisting targets super effectively like Latios and Latias and removing items at the same time. It quickly overwhelmed the player base with how insanely broken it was even without its new mega form. It was almost instantly banned, lasting almost no time at all in the tier, getting banned outright months ahead of the other obscenely broken Pokemon like Mega Lucario. Generation 7 came out and we saw new prominent water types like Tapu Fini and Toxapex. And even they didn't change how innately busted such a powerful fast Pokemon would be, especially one that would be able to harness the power of Z moves and blow past any resist. So what changed in Generation 8 Sword and Shield to make Blaziken go from this unequivocally broken monster into the least of OU's problems, especially since it received more buffs in the form of close combat for a more reliable fighting stab, as well as one of the best moves in the game in U-turn? Well, Blaziken is still quite an excellent Pokemon in Gen 8 OU, with a significant amount of success to its name. However, before we get to that, we'll examine what changed that brought Blaziken down to such comparatively palatable levels. It wasn't the loss of its Mega or Z moves, it was already busted without them. So what was it then? Well, first off, the loss of hidden power was incredibly important. No longer being able to slap on HP Ice was huge in a metagame where Landorus Theory was absolutely everywhere. Secondly, the fact that Slowbro was absolutely everywhere was not at all helpful either. Yeah, Blaziken could hit it super effectively, but its massive physical bulk and the ease with which it kept itself healthy through Slack Off and Regenerator, to say nothing of the anti-knockoff Cobra Berry strategy it ran to help against Weavile, meant it was not an easy Pokemon for Blaziken to break through. The lack of hidden power stung here too. Blaziken could have otherwise easily hit Slowbro quite hard with a powerful hidden power Grass, and it couldn't even enlist the assistance of a powerful Pursuit teammate to trap Slowbro. Finally, with the addition of heavy duty boots and the enormous distribution of defog, Pokemon had an easier time than ever staying at high health, meaning they would remain just out of that elusive knockout range for Blaziken. Gen 8 Blaziken's lack of immediate obscene brokenness made some reconsider its potential brokenness in Generation 7. However, it was generally agreed that it would be too much even if it wasn't busted on its own, which was the likely outcome. It would definitely be undesirable to add yet another insane threat to a metagame already overflowing with them. However, make no mistake, though not in Uber anymore, Blaziken established itself as a generally great OU Pokemon, often working in tandem with Torkoal's Sun to become even scarier. However, even without it, it was able to utilize leftover Swords Dance sets whose surprising longevity allowed it to go the distance in a metagame defined by such a trait. By not being on a timer, instead being able to stick around, Blaziken was able to make the most of its excellent wall breaking and sweeping talent, making it far easier to reap the benefits of spamming Flare Blitz, despite the recoil. It took a lot of changes for Blaziken to not completely destroy OU, and it remained excellent despite that. Let me know in the comments, are there any other Pokemon whose brokenness you might not know the details of? If so, I might just dive into them in the future. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you let me know by leaving a like and subscribing, and check out my previous discussion video on the worst Pseudo Legendary.